Hi, and welcome to Black on the Mat, the space where culture, community, and yoga intersect through our lived experiences. We're your host. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Seisha. Join us on this journey to bring representation and shed light on often overlooked stories on the yoga mat.
We're creating an accessible roadmap into yoga for Black people, building a community in this predominantly white space.
And letting folks already into yoga know that we're here.
How you doing, girl?
I'm okay. I'm glad I have personally had my time on the mat for the day. It makes a big difference in the start of the process. How are you?
I am wishing I had my time on the mat. I got stuck in a TikTok scroll and I was like, I'm gonna do my yoga. And I was like, oh, well, I ran out of time. It makes a difference. And so I'm like, dang, well, we'll just do it right after. We'll do it right after. Because we're
absolutely.
We're almost at 1,000 days of my, oh, sorry, that's a lie. We're almost at 500 days of my 1,000-day meditation. I am excited. So today we're talking about the misconceptions of yoga, because I feel like people think yoga is one thing. And I'll be the first one to admit, I was one of those people. I say people think, I'm like, I was formerly one of those people. I'm a recovering yoga ain't for me person. So,
and I would agree. I think that's a lot of people's stories, that we hear things or we see, especially for a long time, we saw a certain perception of yoga. And then you just make decisions from what you hear and what you see versus like actually experiencing things and having discussions. So here we are having the discussion.
Yeah. So what do you feel is like probably like the top or one of the top misconceptions people think when they think about yoga?
When I first started teaching yoga and I told people I was into yoga, all of a sudden the immediate response was, yoga's for white people.
Facts. I mean, is it? But that's what I thought. I was like, oh, this ain't for me. This is for others.
Right, but yoga's for white people. And I was like, mm-hmm. And so the thing is that I'm here to change that. That was literally like the conversation. And it was a very easy role that yoga's for white people, and specifically for like skinny white women.
Mm-hmm.
That is who yoga is for and is built for. And I feel like that was what was obviously what was presented the most in mainstream media or whatever representation of media, of yoga, representation in media of yoga that there was, that it was just all, like I said, like skinny white people. They all lived in these places that had pure white walls, and you could see their hip bones.
Are killing me.
You know, I'm right. You know, that was the image, like because you could see it. maybe a seafoam green or a light gray. And that's the best you got. Everything else is just like, it's just pure. And it's like, oh, wow, yoga is for like pure. And what do you just, it's a real thing. It's an activity.
Yeah. And you didn't see us. Like yoga's been around for years, and I don't feel I started seeing people in the yoga scene until the 2000s. And I don't even want to say early 2000s. I feel like it was still later that you didn't see us. And so when you don't see us, the automatic situation, and then there's not the inclusivity to have yoga studios in our neighborhoods, you're like, oh, this ain't for me, because I got to go to the white part of town to do a yoga class. So it's telling me already, this ain't for me. So
that's for them.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, absolutely. And then another big one is that yoga, especially like men, like yoga's for women. Mm-hmm. And I'll say that still there is like a lack of representation for far more for men than it is for women. Like I can find a plus size woman, a skinny woman, a woman of all shapes and sizes and colors. When it comes to men, it's like 3 profiles.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and I think it's kind of the same thing as it was for seeing people of color. I think more men are getting into yoga. You're seeing athletes are getting, like, professional athletes are showing up and doing yoga. And so it's becoming, again, more accessible when we see more people who look like us in the male perspective as well. Then you're like, oh, yoga is for, it can be for me. But we just haven't seen a
Absolutely.
lot.
Right. And that has been, I feel like, a big hindrance, and like part of the reason that we wanted to do this, right? Like what you see and who you see doing it really makes a difference of what you believe is possible.
Yeah.
And so it's just really the misconception that it is impossible, that we don't do this, we don't belong in this space.
Yeah.
What do you feel um about when people just say, oh, yoga is just stretching?
Yeah. That goes with my other one. It's like, oh, you have to be flexible to yoga. If that was the
Mm-hmm.
case, I don't think I'd really be on the mat. And that's real talk. Like, I used to be a lot more flexible, but I'm not as flexible as I used to be. I think people say that all the time, and it is kind of, I feel bad because they're like, oh, it's not a real workout. It's just a stretching class. And I can do that before I lift all my weights. What people don't realize is yoga is just as physical demanding as a weight class, as a boot camp. And you don't think about it. I mean, it's the same thing I think when people think about Qigong, people think, oh, it's not really, you're not doing much. You're just moving your hands. Little, you're moving some serious things, and there is
So
some
much.
exercises. And so I just find it, it's disappointing when people think it's just stretching, because it's it's more. It's about the balance. It's about strength. I mean, you look at classes like what you teach, vinyasa, you're holding these poses and you're doing these things that, tree pose. I'm like, why would anyone want to put a leg up on their leg, on one leg, and then stand forever and then try to balance the other way? And I'm just like, that don't make any sense to me. And then I flip it to what I do, Kundalini. It's like, I was teaching a class yesterday and it felt, very normal. Like, your hands are all the way up and you're doing this. But we're doing this for 4 minutes and 30 seconds. It was fine the first minute. Then I was like, oh, my hands are killing me. And you just don't realize the amount of exercise and physicality that goes into what seems so simple until dun, da, 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 you try it.
Right. So and as we said, like some of the different styles of yoga, right? Like, so you get into those little tiny touch points and those spaces where you're working muscles that you haven't really worked in a long time. And honestly, it's the same thing with vinyasa. Like, people that come to a vinyasa class, they're like, I haven't had to put my leg up in a 3-legged down dog. I have to balance my weight on my hands and my feet. And this, like, there's so much there as far as like the required physicality of it that I feel like is ignored, and that it's like, oh, it's not not a real workout, but it's like your muscles, you're worked, you're tired. And then the benefits that people get, like yoga was introduced, I feel like, to the Western culture as workout only, right? And then we kind of had to explore the ideas more, or somebody had to know to kind of give you the sense like, no, no, no. Yoga also is this. Yoga does more than that. There's philosophies. There's,
Mhm.
there's limbs. There's grounding in it. There's a lot of breathing. There's so many things that go with it. It's not just the physical shapes that you can put your body in. So it seems like it's just stretching because you don't know that there's more value, but then there's so much more value.
Yeah. And that goes back to another point that we were talking about earlier, is that, okay, there's the value, and it's more than just a workout. There can be a spiritual aspect to it, and depending on the different types of yoga, because myth is there's only one type of yoga and there's 50 million other types of yoga. And then, I know
Right.
people, some of my Black friends are like, oh, no, I'm Christian, I don't do that. I was like, oh, wait,
Mm.
oh my. So is this other person right behind you, and that other person over there, it's not a religion. There's a difference between
Mhm.
spirituality and religion. Like, what are your thoughts on that aspect of yoga?
So funny story specifically about that. When I did my yoga teacher training, I was still married and I was still attending the church that I was going to, that we went to. And people asked me, some people really asked me some thoughtful questions. So I appreciate that they weren't just judgmental. But we had the discussion of like, well, it's against, I've heard this, it's demonic, it's against Christianity and this, that, and the other. And there's a few thoughts that I have about this. One, we make shapes that are named after certain Hindu gods and just members of their stories from mythology, and they claim it as mythology, right? And so if you believe in your God, what myth can stand against that? That has always been my number one, right? If this is stated as mythology, have you ever been concerned, and have you ever been concerned about anybody else's mythology? Does it stand against your God? Because then it shouldn't. And to be fair, you and I personally have had the religious conversation, I believe, but like when we talk about God and respecting God and reaching for God in religious practices, God is just a translation. I mean, Allah is just a translation for God, right? This isn't a different God. This is God.
Yeah.
Right. Versus all the gods that if it's a main God up in the sky, it's one God, it's God. It is not like this God and that God versus, again, the Hindu mythology and things when we go into like the Mayan cultures and things that go back to where there are different gods and different intentional praising for that God. It's still like, this isn't that. We are not sitting here praising all of these different gods necessarily. We are making shapes in our bodies that represent their stories. And I think every type of culture, especially, well, besides American culture, we have other things. Every indigenous type of culture or every like country that you go to really that has their own type of cultural history has their stories, right? Has their myths, has their things that like children learn, nursery rhymes. We have nursery rhymes. Like it's that same kind of thing, like as far as understanding the story behind it. And then our level of understanding, we learn lessons, life lessons about sharing and understanding yourself and all this stuff. That's what's bound up in it. And so when I had this conversation with this woman specifically, she was saying like, I'm worried about this and that. And I showed her some poses and she said, oh, we do those as stretches. Stretches when? Before liturgical dance? So either you've already sinned, baby, or it doesn't matter. And I'm actually leaning towards it doesn't matter. Right. And so, and then the third part of that, the big thought that I always question people with is, if you've never felt challenged by Greek mythology, then why are you concerned with Hindu mythology? Why is it a problem? Is it because the people are brown? Because we've learned that evil stuff, evil stories, evil this, evil that, demonic this, demonic that comes from Africa, comes from India, comes from brown people. And just stories that are cool and fun, whatever, come from people that aren't brown. And it's like, so how much of that do you really want to take on and accept, or do you want to actually acknowledge it and fight against it? And,
And I honestly, I just think people don't even go that deep. They're like, it's a religion. I don't do that. I don't think people know even what religion they think that it is a religion. If someone says, oh, it's a religion, and you ask them what religion, be like, oh, yoga. Because that's how much they don't know. Because again, you have the parts of yoga that come from, the Egyptian culture. You go to all the different temples and you see they were doing yoga just as well. And so, and then people say that, oh, well, that we were the originals. Well, if the Egyptians were the originals and you're claiming them, why aren't you claiming the practice that they did? So I think people aren't intentionally ignorant per se, but I'm saying
willfully.
But I'm saying that they just like, it's this assumption. I don't know any better. This is what I think it is. And so this is how I'm going to base it on. It's just like a lot of people like, oh, I don't eat that. Nah. Have you had that before? No, I don't eat that. I don't eat that kind of food. Have you ever tried it? Do you know anyone? No, but I don't eat that type.
Let me tell you, it's for me personally, as a turnoff. I'm not dating necessarily at this time. but it is absolutely a turnoff. Like your closed-mindedness to even trying it, or like regardless of what it is, your closed-mindedness, huge turnoff. Because it's like yoga and this is part of the reason why I guess I get it. Yoga, along with other religions, has a belief system, right? Has a system of expectations and standards and a way you carry yourself, but it's the matter of thinking and applying. And I think the biggest thing that people don't get about like the concept of religion versus yoga is like, for religions and religious practices, you go to someone, you go to this place, and you're supposed to, right? I'm praying to God, I'm praying to this, I am praying for that, versus I am meditating and going in. I am reflecting and going in. I am working on my physical practice and going inside and acknowledging it for myself. And I honestly feel like part of I don't even know if it's a misconception. I think it's an intentional teaching that you shouldn't do that.
Of course, it's an intentional teaching. Look at history. Hello. They took away a bunch of people when slaves came over here. They intentionally tried to shift them into something else. And the same thing with this. It's like, oh no, this seems like the devil's worship. And no, we need to call it something so people, it's propaganda. It is propaganda. It's coming back to something that can help you without the need of Western medication and paying all these doctors and all these other different things. Like I get the closed-mindedness because I was closed-minded most of my life. Like I totally see it, understand it. Like that's why I said I'm recovering. This ain't for me, yoga. Like yoga ain't for me. It's for others. But I feel like what I didn't realize until I got into it is the spiritual practice that came through yoga that I need, that I get, that has given me clarity on who I am as a person. It's given me clarity on, oh, is this what I really want? Or this is what I'm really stressing about? And I've been able to figure out, oh, okay, as I breathe, I'm holding tension in this part of my body, which I now know is part that connects to my kidney, that connects to fear. And I wouldn't know that without these practices and being able to work through different things without having to take medication. And I'm not saying I'm like woo-woo completely, because I think that's another, ideal. People like, oh, you must be like Erykah Badu and you're always zen. Like, no, try me. I'm not.
Well, why is Erykah Badu the only spiritual Black person that we have ever heard of or know?
Because who else would you? But seriously, I mean, yes, there are. Who else would you name? Lenny Kravitz, who just had a video of him butt booty naked, not very spiritual. That's just, showing the ass, which I'm not mad at. But who else?
Listen, Lenny, sir, if you ever want to come on the show, you're welcome. We would like to talk to you.
Come any way you want.
Listen.
But yeah, I don't. It's that when someone says, oh, you are spiritual, or oh, you are into yoga, or you're into Zen or whatever, they think, oh, you're like Erykah, because there is no other reference. And I don't even know if she does yoga. I don't. And I don't even know what religion she is or spirituality that she does care to. I don't know. But when you say, oh, I'm vegan, oh, you're like Erykah. Oh, you wrap your head. You must be really, spiritual and all peaceful.
Right. What happened to India Reeve? So did you know, fun fact, I don't know if you probably knew, but our listeners may not know, Eartha Kitt did yoga. I'm a big fan personally of Eartha Kitt. And there are pictures of her, like we're talking 40, 50 years ago.
Outfit.
Doing her yoga. She's got a mat. And I want to say she's like on a mat on a cement floor, like hardcore, and that is, I feel like, something that we should know more as people, like as a community, And the fact that she saw it as something that was valuable to her, she obviously definitely shared that with the people around her, but that wasn't mainstream at the time at all for us. And I'll say that even I do believe there was an insurgence a long time ago as well, because my grandma, when I started teaching yoga, she still had her faculties at that time, and she told me about her doing yoga, and she literally said, like, I don't know, it also changes your mind, and I'm a little iffy about that. And it's like, yeah, it changes your mind
For the
in
good.
a beautiful way. My childhood might have been nicer if you had actually stuck with some of this yoga.
My
We'll never
mom
know.
only had yoga when I was younger, and life would have been different. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe I got less beatings.
Maybe, right? She wouldn't have been as quick to say, listen, a backhand across the anyway. We're healing. We're healing.
We're healing. We're healing. But like I do want people to realize just because you practice yoga doesn't mean you have now crossed into and you've become ritualized into what people assume an Erica Badu person is like. You are not automatically woo-woo. You can do yoga and listen to trap music and shake your ass in the club the next day or the same day because, you can shake your ass in a yoga class because there's trap yoga. So it's like,
Absolutely.
you don't have, it doesn't mean because I do this, I'm now that. It doesn't mean because you do this, I'm now like a monk and I don't eat meat and I see love
I
and
never
light.
listen to anything that is negative or
Love and
low
light.
vibrational, quote unquote,
Yeah,
or
love and light, love and light, love and light. No, that ain't me. And that used to, and that,
literal.
but also I had that misconception. It is me to some degree, and I get that, but I came in feeling uncomfortable doing this practice that I love because I was like, well, I don't, I didn't, when I first started doing yoga, I'm like, I don't want to wrap my head. I don't want to
Mm.
wear that. I don't want to, I'm not this complete Zen person. And I felt like, well, how can I be doing this practice and not be love and light to everyone? Peace. Namaste. I actually hate the word namaste. I'm not gonna lie. I actually hate namaste. And I feel almost guilty saying I hate namaste. It just feels so fake to me. It
Mm.
doesn't feel real. So I don't say it. I'll say ashe, which is the
Mm.
Egyptian version of namaste, and I'm fine with that because it resonates with.
Well, what I appreciate that, and I feel like though that is a thing that if you talk to or if you follow Susan Bartaki,
Mhm.
she talks about this a lot, that like we shouldn't be saying namaste at the end of classes regardless, because it is a greeting and it is allegedly a greeting for someone that you see in a higher light. So like if I said this to my pastor or a teacher, right? Like, so if the student said it to me as the teacher walking in the room, not saying that I want it, but it would make sense versus me saying it to everyone at the end. It's like saying, hello, person that I revere at the end.
Yeah.
Like, now at the same time, I kind of personally, this is just me, this is just Seisha. I feel like it's one of those things that does kind of work because at the end of a vinyasa class, you go through your shavasana, you died on this mat. So, hello, new person that came. Welcome to whatever happens after this, because I feel it that way. And I feel like that does make sense to me, but I'm not going to go against the way the practice is. It's something that already exists, right?
That's
So
why
I
our
can
practice is
respect it.
different because we would say Sat Nam. Sat Nam is truth is my identity. Your truth, your true self. It's like I see you. Sat Nam to us is like, hey, I see you. I see the true you. And I'm okay with that. So we don't say namaste at the end. We say Sat
Mm-hmm.
Nam at the end. It's like, I see your true self. So it's very similar, but again, two different practices of the same thing called yoga.
Right. Absolutely. What's the craziest misconception you've ever heard?
It's not the craziest, but I feel like it's a common one is that like that you have to be silent constantly.
Mm.
I don't think it's the craziest, but I think it's one of those ones that people don't always think about. It's like, oh, gotta be quiet. Your mind has to be like gone. No
Yes. So not
thoughts.
even the physical quiet,
Oh
like
no.
fully zen,
Fully like
completely. I live in the ether. Um,
you gotta be Beyonce on mute. Beyonce just said everyone on mute.
and you just live in this like perfect state of whatever. Yeah.
So for an
No,
hour,
that's
you
a
gotta
good
be
one.
on mute. And that is such a lie, honey.
Mm-mm. And like, how can I be on mute when there's music playing? Why do I need to do this? Most of the time, there's some sort of music, even if it's sitar music or something more traditional, there's something, right? Especially here, like if you go to an ashram in India, maybe that's not the experience, but here, yeah, there's probably music. You have something going on. Um, and like, so quieting the mind versus silencing the mind, that's a huge thing. That's real.
Yeah, I feel like for
Um,
me that's a big one that I had to overcome again with meditation and with yoga. It's like, well, I don't know how and I go, maybe it's a white, and that was goes back. Maybe this is a white thing because this black girl is thinking about the cute little outfits. There's a guy in the class. Oh, he looks cute in that little outfit. Or like, oh, how did she get her leg like that? Or I'm hungry. What do we eat after this class? Those are always kind of the random thoughts, or like, okay, let's try to quiet the mind. Let's hear Beyonce put everyone on mute. No, that didn't work. I tried everything. I've tried everything and it's not working. And I used to feel that this wasn't for me because I couldn't do it until I
mm,
realized that it wasn't about quieting, like it wasn't about silencing the mind. You can
right.
welcome, recognize, and witness
And
and
release.
on. Yeah. And keep
Yeah.
moving and keep moving.
Yep.
But I also, going back to the point you were talking about with silencing, a lot of classes you are quiet, you're not saying anything, you're just focusing on breathing. And those were the types of yogas that I first started doing. Where I am now, we chant all the time. I hella love chanting. It's like just singing in a choir. It's like I love
Mm-hmm.
these songs, and some songs you just get you in a zone to where when I'm chanting, the mind is now quiet, which I found interesting. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
you ever
Mm-hmm.
do any chanting, but for me, when I chant, that's when my mind gets the quietest.
See, I feel like mine is quiet in the movement. That's why I love vinyasa. If I connecting my body, like the movement to the flow,
Mm-hmm.
I can't think about shit else. Like I am here. My fingertips are pointed forward. My toes are tucked. My pelvic bone is wrapped into my spine. Like I
Yeah.
can't focus on my big toe pointing 45 degrees to the left and also wonder about what's on my grocery list. I can't do those things at the same time. That's not how my mind works. So my mind is happy on the mat and like right after the mat. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
all those 90 million things that were happening in my brain from a whole 30 seconds before my eyes opened today in bed. That to find that level of like relaxation, again, a quiet mind, not a silent mind. Because do I still have to do things? Sure. Am I still hungry now? Absolutely. But it's not like, okay, so now I have to eat this, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to open this, I have to email this, it's just like, let me eat something.
Yeah.
And then
People
I
work.
can continue.
Yeah.
You're right.
I just feel like, at the end of the day, I want people to recognize that yoga spaces are for them. Because I think what we talked about in the beginning of this episode is that people think, oh, it's not for me because I don't see anyone looks like me. We're here. We're literally doing this podcast so that we're here, that there are, and we want to change this fact that it's not inclusive. We are doing it by teaching every week. We're doing it by having this podcast. We're doing it by telling you that yoga is more than probably what you think it is, but you'll never know if you don't give it a try.
Yeah.
Period.
Right. And give it a try. And that's the thing. All the laughs that we have had during this episode, I want them to be community laughs, right? I want this to be a community space to laugh at the things that we thought, not laughing at you, not laughing at you specifically, at me specifically, laughing at us. No, we are laughing at like the silliness of these ideas, and we can create our real understanding of like, nope, We belong in this space. There's R&B and trap music here too. There is movement and laughter here too. There's a space for us to exist here in this, not despite this.
Yeah. Just try it.
Just try it. I think that brings us to a nice place to wrap it up, right? So definitely explore yoga with an open mind. There are resources. We provide resources on our pages, and they're down in the caption because that's what we do.
Thank you for joining us today on Black on the Mat.
Let's continue connecting, sharing our stories, and sowing the benefits of having a yoga practice in your life.
Subscribe to Black on the Mat on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
I'm Seisha, and you can find me at Thick Thigh Yoga on all social media platforms and thickthighyoga.com.
I'm Danielle, and you can find me at HelloWell with Danielle on IG, YouTube, and HelloWellWithDanielle.com.